Muy buenos días a todos. Les damos la más cordial bienvenida al cuarto webinar sobre determinación.
About migrants, refugees, and needs for protection. Today is October 26th, and we are on this regional conference on migration with the support of four international observer organisms, including UNICEF, UNHCR, whom we would like to thank for joining us and supporting us throughout this year to address these topics on these four webinars. Today is the last one, and we would like to thank everyone for supporting us. And we would like to officially welcome all of you, and I would like to welcome Nancy Guerrero. She is the coordinator of the work group on protection, and at the same time, she represents the pro tempore presidency in Costa Rica with some welcoming remarks. Thank you, Nancy. Good morning. Can you all hear me? Yes, we can. I would like to welcome you all and thank you again for your participation and for persevering throughout these four webinars. As a coordinator of this group, it is an honor to be able to welcome you on this last webinar corresponding to this activity that Luis has already talked to you about on the higher interest of refugees and children and needs for protection. Throughout these previous webinars, all of you and your delegations have been proactively participating on the different topics and activities that we have promoted, and we would like to thank you for your support because this way we have enriched not only an exchange of opinions and been able to get to know about the best practices, because this way we have been able to replicate all these examples in our countries. And today we are going to coordinate successfully this activity. And we are really proud because we know that you all as representatives in your countries, in spite of the circumstances that we are going through, will continue to work for the children in all our countries, for the migrants and the refugees, that just because being a children require and need this protection that we can provide them with. So once again, we would like to thank you for your participation throughout all these webinars that we have been conducted, and I would like to encourage you to take advantage of today's activities, and I wish you a very successful activity. And again, I would like to thank you for your support and participation, which is the most important aspect. Thank you, Nancy, on behalf of the pro tempore presidency for your kind words. And I would like to thank your family who has been helping you for this broadcast. Yes, excuse me, because sometimes I try to explain my dad, but he's and the same for my daughter. They like to be on camera, but for those of us who have children, know how difficult it is for them to understand. My girl is only 3 years old, so sometimes it's difficult for them to understand because they like to be on camera. So once again, my apologies. So please understand. And you can all understand this dynamic that we have to go through. So, well, sometimes these things get out of hand, but to make us laugh and make us more human. So, no, on the contrary, we would like to thank you because this webinar is about children and adolescents. So, what better way to understand that with your little girl on screen? So, again, thank you. And as a protection group, I would like to thank you once again for all the efforts that you have conducted and for the support that we have always received from ILO and UNHCR and UNICEF to conduct successfully all these types of activities. Yes, and UNICEF reminds us that we all have children at home, so what better way to work with them and protect them that with all these webinars. So briefly, I am going to share these slides about the context of these four webinars. Renan, can you confirm that you can see my screen? Yes. So today we are on the fourth webinar about the higher interest of children and adolescents that are refugees and who need protection. This started on March 25th with the first webinar. Before this pandemic, we wanted to conduct a workshop to determine the higher interest of children and adolescents that are refugees in San Pedro Sula and Honduras, but unfortunately we were not able to do it face-to-face, and this is the reason why we came up with these 4 webinars, the first of which took place on March 25th with a presentation of the context and the preliminary results of a survey that was conducted by IOM on the current situation and the current discussion on COVID-19. So when it was when we were starting to see the first effects of COVID-19, so on April 29, we held the second webinar about the guidelines for children and adolescents. And on May 20th, we have the third one on the dialogue on challenges that have been identified on the region. And the fourth, which will be held today, is the construction of a new strategy based on the elements that we're going to have for the group for these countries that are members for the strategy for the future. We're not going to apply it right away, but thanks to the support of these 4 agencies, we're going to have an instrument that will be presented this morning. So on April 29, we had the presentation on the organisms, and UNICEF presented the higher superior on the human mobility, and IOM presented a guide for protection, attention, and protection of migrants, and also the guidelines to determine the higher interest of children, and ILO also shared some things related to children and children that work and refugees that are migrants. And the third webinar was about a dialogue in which we have a discussion about the challenges regarding this topic with Mexico, Costa Rica, Honduras, and Panama. And if you were not already part of these other webinars, these are available on our YouTube channel. You have the link in there, and you can go to this challenge, and you can register, and you can find the different webinars on migrant children and adolescents, refugees, and those that have a need for protection. And these were held in Spanish only, but today we have simultaneous interpretation. So you can listen in to this in the language of your choice. So I don't want to take much of your time, but we'll listen to Luisa Rosario, our consultant, and she's joining us from the Dominican Republic, and she will be presenting an operating guide or an index about how to determine the highest interest for migrants. Good morning, Luis Alonso, and thank you for the introduction. It is a pleasure for me to share this space with you. So as Luis Alonso was saying, more than an instrument, it is a structure and the general elements. And the idea is for you to get to know this and for you to construct along with us, because the idea is for all of us to work together as we have been doing with the other webinars and other spaces for dialogue and discussion. And the idea is to incorporate the different focuses and realities of all the members. And the idea is for you to get to know how we can structure and think, and for you to make timely contributions. Do we have the presentation on screen? Not yet. Can you open your video? Or if you have technical difficulties, it is okay. Yes, we were looking at the presentation. Okay, then I have to refresh my browser, Lisa. Okay, you're in good hands with the members of the CRM. Thank you. This is an operating guide to determine the higher interest in the context of human mobility. That is something that we started working on based on dialogues and spaces that you have had to respond to this. So as I said, this is just a presentation of the index that we are studying. We are building this guide to verify with you the possible focuses and guidelines and topics that we would like to be a part of it. And the needs that we want this to respond to is an instrument that will be aimed at offices out on the field with when we want to work with children and adolescents that are migrants, and the idea is for this to include the tools and procedures that will help to apply these principles. Before these chapters, we're going to have an introductions that we'll see later on, and then we're going to determine the fundamental terms that will be included. Chapters 1 and 2 will consist of the theory and the guidelines, and chapter first will include how to determine the best interest of the child as provided for in the international and regional guidelines that we have as mandate. And on chapter 2, we're going to have the basic procedures that should be included in order to apply the best interest of the child as a theory for this guide. And at regional and global level, we want to work on this complexity for the best interest of the child. And in order to respect the operational focus, we are going to have these couple of chapters to establish in direct words what the best interest of the child consists of, but what it means in the context of human mobility. Chapters 3 and 4 will consist of the operation guideline with the operationalization of the procedures in order to apply the best interest of children. And chapter 3 will be based on the evaluation of the interest of children. And we have think about establishing the procedures that will be accompanied by the instruments necessary or the practical tools necessary to develop the actions and tasks. And also considering the context for the public and the members and the specific audience or target audience. Chapter 4 will stop to determine the best interest of children, which, as you all know, is going to include much more requirements. And this is the reason why it has been separated, because it is going to include different actors to see who can conduct an evaluation, especially if it consists of a preliminary evaluation to see who should lead this determination as a formal procedure. And chapter 5 is going to take a look at the implementation of the best interest of children within the framework of this at a cross-border level. And many of you have been a part of other webinars and other spaces, and you have discussed all these needs in order to have clear and practical elements that have already been established in other cases that have involved and need the interactions between 2 or more countries. And finally, the last chapter is going to try and promote the evaluation and follow-up of these same procedures that have already been established. And to do so, we are going to try and provide practical resources and tools. The target audience for this guide will mainly consist of first contact officers for the children and adolescents within these migrant communities, like consulates, protection officers for children, NGOs, and other social actors that you are aware of. And as you all know, being an operating guide and these being like the field audience, the characteristics that I'm going to present next will be determined precisely by this type of audience and its practical characteristics. We would also like to have a friendly document that is already being prepared, at least until chapter 3. We already have a draft that is going to be flexible for your contributions. We want this to be not to be overwhelmed with so many pages and annexes. We want this to be not more than 30 pages, but we want it to be practical, and its contents are going to be part of the legal global frameworks for children, following the guidelines that we already have at regional level that you are all familiar with. And they have been prepared by CRM. And it will have charts that are easy to read and flow charts for procedures in order to determine the best interest of children. And also these procedures will be accompanied, as I already said, with tools that will be a regional instrument. So each country will have the liberty to adapt them and enrich them, but always responding to the operational aspects. I would also introduce what I just say about the general structure, but with some more details. As an introduction, as we typically do, it will include the institutional framework to facilitate these guide objectives, audience, uses, and also an explanation of the structure. And it would also gather the context since the needs that it results out of, and also the advances and the elements that we already have, and also the challenges that it responds to, and the key definitions that will come out of this for the limitations that we are going to prioritize as the principles. And also in chapter 1, that is the principle of the best interest of children. It will include the different subtopics that will be included in here, and then they will be based on what we have in the international instruments. But as I said, it's going to have a special interest in all of these to be read in and apply with the purpose of the person that is going to use them to be part of the context of human mobility, to be able to interpret them directly. And as for chapter 2, we're going to find the main procedure established by the convention and also by the Committee of the Rights of Children to determine the best interest. You have two procedures, as we already mentioned, and what we would like to do is to clear any concerns or doubts of what's implied, and also the main stakeholders that we have in each of them. And As for this type of operations, we need to see what we can do at the theoretical level and what predominates on the different things that we have for the different chapters. And in here, we want to clarify these two types of procedures so that we can differentiate to say if they are related or not, or when we can apply one or the other. So when we have field officers, I think that it's important to have this differentiation, because sometimes we can think that we are talking about this type of terminology or other steps of this procedure. As for chapter 3, we have this definition of how to determine the best interest of children, and it would have specific indications, step-by-step considerations, and the different tools or instruments to have and follow all these steps, and we would have some theory to see how we can apply, for example, time indications, and then it'll stop at 3.5. And then we'll have some subtopics which would be like the core of this chapter. And this would have all the indications of what an officer should do. Like, well, this is the first step, and this is what they should do. So we are looking for a way for these charts and flow charts to help them understand what they should do on every situation. Because we know that we can have different events and things, and we are different countries, so that they can have an understanding. And for these tools that will refer within this document. If we have a tool, for example, that is proposed when we need to evaluate the best or determine the best interest of children or adolescents, we need to have a way to present a or a document, and that model can be indicated and also provided or offered. And the same for chapter 4. And it will be done specifically when it comes to determine this best interest of children. And this chapter is the one that's less developed. And we have to go over the bibliography. And this is something that I have received from the agencies and the different contributions. And this is the one that's much more complex due to the requirements and procedures, and where we have some guarantees. And this is aimed at first, maybe not that aimed at first contact officers, but to the way in which they should refer the cases to the protection systems, and how these protection systems are going to establish per country how they are going to do things. And as I was saying, the guide is trying to link them directly to the different cases for children and adolescents, and how we can gather all these national experiences and apply them into a regional instrument. So as I was saying, this is the same for chapter 3 and 4. So we'll provide the different indications, and we'll establish the procedures in the best concrete and operational way possible, and it will be accompanied by the different instruments that the countries can use as the foundation or basis and chapter 5 for a cross-border handling of cases. They want to set the regional guidelines. And this is going to be reviewed at the level of other protocols or instruments. But I think that this is going to be an important contribution at the CRM level, because this is a way to address things when it comes to operational challenges, when it comes to the cross-border handling of cases to determine the best interest of children, and last, the follow-up and evaluation of these procedures. Even though they will be focused on the guide, we'll find a way to monitor the implementation or lack thereof. And this is going to help us monitor what we have been doing. And then we can have concrete mechanisms that will help us the foundation on things that we can propose, and then we can adapt them and use your own and adapt them to what you can do personally. And as for the annexes, these are the tools that have been proposed, and these are some of the tools that will accompany the different procedures and the different tasks and actions when it comes to determining the best interest of children for the main people. And then we can have a list of vulnerabilities and people at risk when it comes to human mobility. And then we can have a way to determine these instruments in the region. And the CRM has some ways to do this. And when it comes to situations of vulnerability. And then we'll have this initial interview so that it is not mistaken with other types of first contacts. And then we can identify these to prevent confusion on the people that is going to apply them. And then we'll have different forms and proposals for these forms for other procedures, and not only for evaluation purposes, but also for determination and case referral. And also for flow charts and other things. So that this can be understood on the context of when you are under stress situations or mass flows or a complicated day-to-day, so that we can have an easy to read or easy to access manual. And we can also have different strategies when we have the participation of adolescents. As for the requirements for the procedures, and we can also have other types of lists and models. And so this is very important when it comes to determining the best interests of children. And we also have the documentation, registration, and all the information that we can gather, and how to do it, how to save it, and how to derive it. And this is also important in addition to the indications when it comes to information handling. We can also have different instruments and the guidelines for the treatment and the importance. And we can also prevent and ensure confidentiality and the rights of children. And this is the reason why we are going to have all these indications. And as I said, the flow charts, which will be general, because we understand that this is a regional context and we have these diverse realities and legislations. And this is at macro level, what we are thinking and what we are working on. And as I said in the beginning, the idea is to have feedback and contributions. And we want to complete this in a month, at least the first draft. So the sooner we have the contributions, the better. but I hope I didn't take much of your time and you're not tired of listening to me, but thank you for your attention. Thank you, Luisa. Please stay here because we are going to start with a Q&A session and comments. And I would like to remind you that this is a tool that is being proposed, that is being offered to all the member countries, and to determine the best interest of migrant children and adolescents and refugees and those in need of protection. And if we had this workshop back in May face-to-face, we had also considered to address this topic and propose this guide. But Luisa kindly volunteered through this presentation to explain the context. And we are going to share this in Word. And of course, we would also include the index with all the comments. For now, we have it in Spanish, but it is being translated. And it will be shared soon as well. And we will be also accepting the comments for this proposal so that we can enrich all the contents. Please bear in mind that the CRM is a non-binding forum, so all the tools that are being offered for member countries are a plus for the purpose of facilitating the governance of migration, and to have this, because the idea is to protect all these refugees. So let's open now this space and dialogue for these organisms. And we would like to offer these 4 agencies that have supported us, at IOM, UNHCR, UNICEF. We will now listen to your comments. And I would like to remind you that you can request to speak. There is this space where you can click on, and it says a request to speak. Or you can send your questions into the chat. We have all the comments. And as I said, it is being translated, so you'll soon have it also in English. All members of the civil society can also make your questions live. For the next, well, this stage is very important so that we can enrich the work that Luisa has been carried out to strengthen this tool and to be able to introduce all these elements that we might consider important. We have Alan Rodriguez from Costa Rica. It is a pleasure to be able to share with you on this scenario. I would like to congratulate you all for the work that you have been conducting with this presentation. I think that the tool that is being proposed is a tool that will position all this topic, and I think that for all the member countries is going to be really useful. And I would just like to mention that Luisa said that hopefully it's not going to be a very long tool, that it's not going to be overwhelming, because as has been the case oftentimes, that we have too much documentation, and so it's too long, so it is no longer practical. I think that it should be basic, so that given the different contexts and the legislations of our different countries, it can be applied in a practical sense with just the basics, so that it applies to position this topic at the regional level for the whole population that is vulnerable anyhow. Thank you. Thank you, Costa Rica, for your comment. Luisa, I don't know if you would like to say something. Yes, thank you. Well, that is part of the offer and of our effort. That's a part of our principle. And I think that this is part of the effort, because we want to know how to reach people, and that we are clear on that. And I think that the agencies will be ready. And I think that everything has to be basic. Let's not wait to find a specific detail about the legislation, because we already have the tools. So thank you for confirming that guide that you have requested yourselves. I would like to remind you that we have this space for dialogue purposes. You can feel free to make your comments either on the chat, or you can request to speak by pressing that small blue box that you have on your screen. You can go there and make your comments live. I would also like to remind you from a logistics standpoint to, if you haven't done this yet, please go to the chat and register. You'll find a link that you can use for registration purposes, so that we can have an orderly registry. And I would also like to remind you that this tool is going to be a very good supplement to others that we already have at on RCM for the member countries. This is, as I said, a non-binding forum, but the idea is for these tools to become operational, and they can be useful for all the countries. So I would like to invite all the member countries to make your comments. I just wanted to request information. If you see that there is an institution that is missing of those that we have considered priority for the use of this future guide, if you see an institution missing, please let me know. If you have, I don't know, migration, first contact officers of commissions, consulates, of NGOs, protection departments, if you can think about any of these institutions that I missed, please let me know. So based on the presentation, please, you can go deeper into these tools, and you can send all your documents, and then we can share all of these with Luisa. And we have migration and the national refugee commissions on the different instances, and NGOs and so on. We have a comment, and I am going to read it because our colleague had some problems. She is congratulating us for the excellent contribution, and as for those that are requesting the protection, it's important to emphasize on the non-refoulement principle, because this is something that we have problems with, because some institutions have no contact with this, because we have training on this, and sometimes when they have a relation with the people that are underage, they insist on calling the embassies or calling their countries of origin. Have you had a experience with this? Yes. I think that this is going to be present not only as the non-refoulement principle, but this is something that we need to explain as a task. And I think that the person that is the first contact is going that we need to emphasize on, and we are going to justify this, because it's not just to something that we need to mention. The officers should or need to understand and ensure the best way to apply this. And I think that this is something that should be a part of the document, and this is we need to know how to address this. Thank you. And we also have Monica, and she is saying that we can contribute any ideas. And what must we include, or for member countries, mostly. Monica? Good morning, Monica, please go ahead. Good morning, Luis, and thank you, Luisa, for your presentation. I just wanted to use this space. And I agree with everything that has been said, because we are making our best effort for this to be practical and operational, as Luisa said again, but any contribution in this sense from member countries on how to ensure that this is operational and not overwhelming or not too long. I think that this is the way to share these experiences and ideas. And as Luisa said, we will be sharing all the contents soon for revision purposes. So if you have any ideas about the possible uses, welcome. So thank you for your participation again. And thank you for accompanying us through this process. The Deputy Director, Maria Isabel from Panama, says that it's important not to lose sight of these cross-cutting mechanisms for unaccompanied or abandoned minors, or those that are victim of or in vulnerability conditions, even once they are no longer minors, in order to prevent their re-victimization. That's really important to consider this element. Deputy Director, you can make your comments, or Luisa. Good morning, first of all, and I would like to congratulate you for the work that you have been conducting. It's a great index, and I would like to mention this because this is something that we have been seeing in private practice. But at least in Panama, we have this universal practice, and we don't even think about they being foreigners or nationals, or that is something that we would like to cover. But however, oftentimes we focus on the point of view of minors as such, and we forget that they'll um, they'll stop being minors, and since they are victims of I don't know, family abuse, or they are abandoned, so when they are no longer minors, when they are of age, they are re-victimized. So as a consequence of not being minors anymore, and I apologize for insisting on this, but this is when we need to think about a solution, and we need to visualize things like, I don't know, when they are candidates to being deported. And I think that it's unfair because for example, let's say that we found someone in Panama, someone that was abused by their family, and they were not, that person was not registered as a Panamanian citizen. So we need to visualize the work that we have been conducting in that sense, and the consequences that we can have because we did not address that from a legal standpoint and from the rights of these minors regarding the recognition of those rights. I just wanted to mention that and put this on the table as a comment, because Panama has been working on that sense with the CENIAF, with humanitarian visits throughout the history. But I want to emphasize on the private sector. We have been working on a pro bono basis for people that have already been deported and then they come back. So culturally, they are Panamanian citizens and they just have a passport from another country and they have spent most of their lives here. So I refer to people that have already been in institutions or under the tutelage of the Panamanian state. So it's different than those that are in black zones, or those that are unfortunately are in different situations. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, we have prioritized some conditions, those that are unaccompanied minors or migrant children or adolescents, or those that are asylum seekers or stateless. But we were not projecting this guide to contemplate this because we were thinking about first the contact officers, so when they transition into the legality of age, well, sometimes the first contact understand that they need to determine who are minors and who are not. But we need to have this guide in relation to what you just mentioned, mainly I don't know, for the application of some things, because we need to determine the first or best interest. Thank you, Deputy Director. Yes, I just wanted to mention that someone from Nicaragua regarding the ministries and health ministries, and I was wondering the same. When it comes to the ministries of labor, yes, well, we can include these officers that have the first contact with migrant children or adolescents. But I understand that the guide do not mention the priorities with the first contact with migrant adolescents and children, or how can they derive these children, because sometimes labor inspection services need to come in contact with these type of children that are refugees in or are vulnerable because they can be victims of human trafficking or other things. So I think that we should include the things like this. But how do other instances that are specifically working on migration and refugee should derive and face the time that they are facing currently with these adolescents and children? Thank you. Thank you, Luisa, and thank you, Deputy Director. Carlos Gomez, please go ahead. Can you remember the country and organism that you represent? Good morning, Carlos Gomez, Deputy Director on Protection and Welfare, SAS. I am with Anaili Torres. She is going to explain some things that we are interested in. Good morning, Director of Special Protection from the Secretary of Social Welfare from Guatemala. We consider that this document is going to strengthen the guidelines from RCM as the baseline for the members of RCM, and I would like to thank the organisms for this support in the implementation of this evaluation and determination of the best interests of children, because we consider that they are the basis not only when children are at the center, but in our case, we are a country of origin, country of destination. So we need to know how to determine the best interest of children in order to strengthen these processes. And as part of this support, we conducted a brief evaluation of this document, and we consider that we are interested in getting to know the tools that have been proposed to see how we are going to articulate them, or what is the proposal for the situations of vulnerability, because we know that all countries have different contexts. But if we have general guidelines or what Annex 1 or 2 are going to include, we can put that in context for our countries, and then we can provide better attention to migrant children and adolescents at regional level. Thank you, Guatemala. I don't know what you would like to refer to. Thank you. And we have these, but we are not going to present it today because we wanted to have all these contributions. But you all said that this should all be like the baseline to respect diversity in each country, both when it comes to the concept and the guidelines. But yes, you can take a look at it in detail and make contributions. And as I said in the beginning, hopefully we'll have it completed, or at least a draft in a month, because what you have now is not the guideline, it's a general proposal. But I think that in a month or so, you'll be able to have the guideline, including the operational guideline or aspects. But it's going to be a very general so that you can use it as a guide. Yes, the follow-up will be done from this work group on protection. So it's important, and I would like to thank you all that have been a part of these webinars. We have another comment similar to the one from Nicaragua. Araceli Romero says that it's important to include, in addition to the institutions, to have personnel from the border police. And this is related to what you mentioned. So thank you again. Cindy Nin, can you remind us the country and institution that you represent? Thank you, everyone. I would like to greet all the member countries. I am from the Dominican Republic, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This is the first webinar that we participate on, and I would like to congratulate you all for the efforts being conducted to prepare this proposal. And I think that this proposal should be practical and easy to handle. We are still waiting for the document in order to make our comments regarding the protection of migrant children and their best interest for the reality of the Dominican Republic. And again, we would like to thank you for all this presentation. Thank you. I would like to thank.
Y también lo anexo su comentario a lo que ha escrito don Carlos Gómez de Guatemala en el chat, en donde indica que sería importante presentar los avances del documento en la próxima reunión viceministerial. Sí, precisamente el seguimiento a nivel técnico todavía está en manos del grupo de trabajo sobre protección. Entonces, en los próximos días recibiremos ya el documento pues ya completo, como ha comentado Luisa, y el seguimiento corresponderá al grupo de trabajo de protección. El paso siguiente sería del grupo de trabajo trasladarlo al grupo regional de consulta sobre migración, al GRCM, para que una vez que el GRCM lo apruebe o lo recomiende, perdón, pasa a aprobación de los viceministros y viceministras. Jessica López nos dice de México, buenos días México, dice, si se busca darle seguimiento en el marco del grupo de trabajo de protección, sugeriría que se revisara con ojo crítico y propositivo la agenda de trabajo de dicho grupo, ya que al momento hay demasiadas acciones que están duplicando esfuerzos en materia de protección a la infancia. Muchísimas gracias por el comentario, Jessica. Sí, sabemos que hay muchas herramientas que se propusieron por los mismos países dentro del mismo grupo de trabajo de protección. Sí se está buscando precisamente evitar esa duplicidad de esfuerzos. Entonces, ahora que esta herramienta se elabora e ingresa al grupo de trabajo, pues será ese ejercicio. Recordemos que esta herramienta de la guía operativa venía solicitada incluso desde que existía la red de funcionarios de enlace de niñez y adolescencia migrante y refugiada. Y es por eso que, gracias al aporte de los organismos, el compromiso quedó muy presente y es por eso que se están presentando los avances esta mañana. Pero sí, efectivamente, Jessica de México tiene toda la razón de que haremos esa revisión y con mucho gusto podemos aportar también a Luisa los otros documentos que están en curso, ¿verdad? Que pues son complementarios muchísimos, ¿verdad? Y lo que por la CRM no se están creando nuevamente, sino que se está retomando ya con base en herramientas ya aprobadas por los viceministros. Esta guía es un ejemplo de cómo sí se puede tener un instrumento práctico, que no es repetitivo de los lineamientos, sino que realmente abona. Muchas gracias, Jessica. Luisa, no sé si quieres hacer algún comentario, sobre todo porque también creo que has revisado otras herramientas que cuenta la CRM.
Sí, eso que decía ahorita, que el reto será con la guía superar esto que ya tenemos y que pueda hablarle, no, digamos, no al país, no solo, sino a cómo son las tareas para tal o cual funcionario o funcionaria, o sea, desde un enfoque de tareas y desde un enfoque de qué debo hacer y de ABC y de cosas también que no son discutibles porque están ya contenidas y mandadas en las normativas nacionales, están ya en todo la normativa internacional, por supuesto. Entonces, como son cosas que ya no necesitan un consenso porque son de ley para cada país y son de ley también a nivel internacional, entonces cómo esas cosas se convierten ya no de la teoría o del análisis, sino cómo se convierten en qué implica como acción para tal o cual personal, ¿no? Sea de migración, sea de consulado. Entonces, ese es el esfuerzo que queremos hacer. Y en ese sentido, muchas cosas, por supuesto, se van a repetir porque no pueden salir de la nada, sino que nacen del marco normativo y de otros protocolos y de otros instrumentos. Entonces, nacen de ahí, pero van a nacer en este formato de como digo yo, de acción, de tarea, identificando incluso eso, a quién le tocaría. Por ejemplo, en la determinación, en la evaluación del interés superior hay muchas tareas para oficiales de primer contacto, pero son básicamente de hacia dónde orientar lo que identifican. Son tareas más de identificación, de registro y de derivación. Entonces, que eso quede claro, porque eso también garantiza mayor protección cuando se usurpan los papeles y cuando una gente está haciendo cosas que no le tocan o al que le toca no las hace porque, por lo que sea, porque no las ve, porque quedó en un documento donde no se sintió que le estaban diciendo cómo podía hacerlo.
en el procedimiento de repatriación y muestran tratos discriminatorios y que vulneran los derechos del menor como tal, y como ser humano. Y sí, lamentablemente esas situaciones las vemos todos los días en todo el mundo, ¿verdad? Pero yo creo que pues, con herramientas como esta y a través de un foro como la CRM es que pues buscamos disminuir estas situaciones, ¿verdad? Y sobre todo en nuestra región. Cualquier otro comentario en este momento son bienvenidos a hacerlo, ya sea a través del chat, con mucho gusto lo leemos, o si quieren hacer uso de la palabra.
Luis.
Sí, Luisa, por favor.
Sí, la experiencia encontrada en la revisión bibliográfica en Europa y en otros contextos no tan parecidos al nuestro es que estos lineamientos podrían servir a los países para luego poder hacer como protocolos o procedimientos específicos dentro de su propia, o sea, bajarlo del nivel regional, no solo al nivel nacional, sino al nivel institucional. Por ejemplo, ahorita se hablaba de la policía de frontera. Pues, por ejemplo, en la Unión Europea tienen manuales muy simples, muy concretos para policía de frontera específicos, porque ya yo sé que tienen manuales, ya yo sé que aplican cosas, pero desde el enfoque de protección a personas migrantes y refugiadas y desde el enfoque, como alguien aportaba ahorita, de las diferentes vulnerabilidades que pueden experimentar niñas, niños y adolescentes, que además del de ser ya migrantes o estar en condición de refugio, o el de ser personas menores de edad, con todo lo que eso supone culturalmente en nuestro contexto, ¿no? Y están también situaciones de trata, de trabajo infantil, situaciones de abuso, de violencia, en el contexto centroamericano lo conocen más que yo, situaciones incluso de uso por grupos del crimen organizado, o sea, entonces también creo que los lineamientos que salgan de aquí pueden aplicarse muy bien para irlos bajando, pero a nivel operativo, o sea, a nivel real, que las orientaciones generales que salgan aquí se puedan aplicar y construir hasta facímiles o folletitos más pequeños para funcionarios específicos. O sea, lo digo también para que no esperemos que en un contexto regional algunas cosas puedan salir tan directas a X institución, sino que CRM lo ofrece como base y podría permitirle a los países ir bajándolo a procedimientos y a protocolos más específicos.
Muchas gracias, Luisa. Y gracias también nuevamente de ese comentario de República Dominicana. Me indican que hemos perdido la interpretación simultánea. Nuestras disculpas sinceras, hemos tenido algunos inconvenientes técnicos con la interpretación esta mañana. No sé si nuestro intérprete nos escucha. Por favor, hacer los ajustes técnicos para que el audio se escuche en el canal correspondiente. Si no es así, nuestras sinceras...
Had some technical problems because I lost the interpreter lost the sound for a second, so my sincere apologies. Can you hear me now? Yes, my apologies. Again, any comments or questions from the member countries, organisms, or members of the civil society? You are all welcome to make your comments. We have gathered very important comments. So you will be soon receiving a proposal. You will be receiving the index and the guide you will be receiving later on. First, you will get the index. On the window, we have uploaded the index and the presentation of, so the guide you will be receiving soon, along with a translation. And I would like to please remind you that we have a registry on the chat. So if you have not along your email, crmvct@iom.int, that will will have it on the chat. So I don't know if any of the organisms would make a comment. We are coming to the end of the fourth webinar. So I would like for all the member countries to have the tools to facilitate all the work that we have conducted for this important population that we have as migrant children, adolescents, and those in need of protection. So I would like to thank you all for the support. This year has been a particular one, but all the way since the beginning of this year with the preparation of this workshop, we started with the coordination since last year, and we moved on to this virtual scenario. So I would like to thank the work of all the groups. Nancy, if you're still online, would you like to make any comments? And I would like to remind you that we are going to keep in contact through the email, and for the next meeting of the work group on protection, specifically on December 1st, we are going to have an advance of the next steps regarding the implementation on this guide. So again, Nancy, the floor is yours. Thank you again. I am by myself. My daughter is playing outside with my dad, so thank you for understanding. I would like to thank you for your attention and participation and for your valuable comments and the presentation that we just had on behalf of Luisa, and for her efforts and dedication for the preparation of this proposal. And we have a great deal of work ahead of us. This is not the end. And specifically when it comes to the protection of migrant children and adolescents and refugees and everything that we are going through, migration is a very dynamic process, and as countries, agencies, we need to keep on working to protect them all. And I think that today's space has been really important when it comes to sharing these experiences on behalf of all of you, because without a doubt, this is going to be very enriching when it comes to this proposal. And as Luis Alonso said, RCM is non-binding. However, thanks to all of these instruments that we have obtained from the different groups that we are a part of, we are obtaining very valuable documents that without a doubt are going to facilitate the application and the improvement of the tasks that we are in charge of in our institutions. And I am from the Director General of Migration and Aliens, and I am really glad to have this opportunity to share with all of you and share your experiences, because this is something that we can apply to our daily tasks. This is something that is not coming to an end, but 2020 has been a year full of challenges, not only at personal level for each of us. This is the new normal that we need to get used to, and it is without a doubt a challenge for public institutions. We have to reinvent ourselves, and we need to think about things in a more comprehensive manner to all the needs of all people. And this is my message. Once again, I would like to thank you all as coordinator of this protection group for your participation on these 4 webinars. So again, thank you for your contribution, because you have enriched the work that has been allocated to us. I wish you all a wonderful day. This is a beautiful morning for those of us who are still on the early hours of the day. And again, thank you all for my eternal gratefulness for your participation and exchange of experiences. Again, thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Luisa, would you like to add something? I would like to thank you for your attention. I would like to thank you for your comments and contributions. You know that you can keep on sending them to the email that Luis shared with you. And it's great to know that we have a great road ahead of us, and we'll keep on sending documents in order for you to react. It's important to keep on building together. This gives more validity to the work, and this will make more feasible to attain our goals. So thank you again, and have a wonderful week. I have a last comment. It's important to have a directory of the different authorities on the countries, and for those that are asylum seekers. So yes, within the framework of all the work that we have conducted with the directories, I think it's important to have all of this. So we need your commitment to update all these directories with all the current information. So thank you. Thank you for the comment. Again, are grateful to UNHCR, ILO, UNICEF. I would like to thank our interpreter, Renan and Juliana, for the support throughout this webinar. We'll keep in contact, and we'll see you on the next meeting with the consultation week and the working group on December 1st. Thank you, and to all a wonderful day. See you soon.